What's up, guys? Welcome back to Babe and the Braids podcast. I'm Allison the Babe.
And I'm Isaac the Braids.
And Babe and the Braids podcast is a podcast all about relationship topics, issues, advice. Isaac is my new fiance. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, we recently got engaged about 2 or 3 months ago. And yeah, so we decided to start a podcast talking about our perspective on relationship issues, topics, whatever. Isaac and I come from completely different backgrounds, and he is interracial. I'm white. He was raised one religion. I was raised another. And yeah, he was raised in Georgia. I was raised in Michigan. So we just have a lot of differences, to be honest.
God, dog, what an intro. The folks have it all now.
The folks have it all. So for today's topic, we wanted to talk about kind of going through transition periods and how we've navigated that and how you guys can navigate that in your relationship. Transition
periods being like job transitions,
life transitions,
mainly job,
moving. I just feel like there are so many. Well, I mean, we can also talk on like college and doing long distance. I know we did do a long distance podcast, but we can kind of touch on, just transitioning through different periods of life and remaining with the same partner. It doesn't mean you guys have to break up if one of you ends up moving to Wisconsin for a job. So we can kind of touch on that because we've been together for, God, it's like now 6 years. And so we've been through plenty of transitions. I mean, we met when we were 19 and now we are 25.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really important to talk about, definitely, like you said, there's been a lot of transitions. Boys have been making moves.
We really hit. And I feel like, I'm honestly, the biggest transition periods in life generally happen from like the time you're 17 or 18 up until you're 30. I mean, there's just so much that happens in your 20s. And I mean, we haven't had a kid yet. We haven't even really gotten married.
We have 2 kids.
We have a cat and a dog. But we can talk about all those and like moving in together. Those are huge transitions I feel like people worry about.
So just to give some context, we started dating when I was at Notre Dame. She was at Michigan State. I got drafted by the Chargers, came out to the Chargers, and I've been with the Chargers ever since. But there's been transitions even within that. Job transitions, and we'll get into that. And just like status transitions, practice squad, up and down, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Allie, same thing. Went to Michigan State, like I said. Then came out to Santa Monica, then went to Irvine, and then now we move in. And in that, she's had multiple jobs and now is in a totally new job as of recent.
If you guys haven't listened to our new announcement video, you guys can go check that out. But yeah, I mean, we have just kind of been through it all. And I feel like we've been through even more transitions than the normal relationship with your job being in the NFL and the fact that we were long distance for a long time, navigating that. So I feel like we can go all the way back to college when our first transition was you getting drafted to the Chargers and you leaving everything that we knew. I mean, we started dating when we were both in college and you kind of made the first leap.
It's just funny because you were like, basically like, what's the furthest possible team? And then boys ended up with the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, it's really funny when I think back to it because I thought like maybe it'll be Ohio, a nice little drive. Worst case scenario, New York, that's a flight. No, he literally went to the absolute furthest team possible, Southern California.
I think the biggest thing to note is just you sacrificed a lot of your 5th year in college coming to travel. Mm-hmm. And I think that was like a huge part of making it work.
I mean, one thing that is so important in relationships is, number one, being understanding of each other, but number two, sacrifices. You have to be willing to make sacrifices. And when it came to Isaac going to California, he wasn't even able to make those sacrifices because he couldn't leave on the weekend to come and see me. So it was me making sure that I had enough money to buy. I mean, obviously we would split flights, but making sure that I was, pulling my end of the deal, but even going above and beyond, like, hey, this weekend, do you have an away game? Okay, I'll come out the next week and we have a home game. And I was the one that was doing all the traveling.
I wonder what changes or what would have changed if I would have chose to come out to California. Like, what if we would have finished school, or I would have finished school, not been going to the NFL, and I was like, I'm going to go work in California? Because I think that's a more realistic scenario for people.
Yeah, because, I mean, not tons of people are getting drafted to California.
Yes, sir.
I think, I mean, it depends on every situation. But let's for the viewer's sake and the listener's sake, we can say that, like, yeah, what if you had gone out to a job in California? To be quite honest, I think it would have been a little bit easier because, well, it would have been easier and harder. Harder in the sense that you would have made that decision to leave.
Yeah, I feel like you could have potentially been like, are you seriously going to go all the way to California?
Mm-hmm. But we can also look at it as, what if the Chargers offered you to be a free agent instead of the Bears? You could have easily been a free agent to the Chargers. So to be honest, I feel like in a relationship, you just need to, like, your priorities need to be not only like keeping, I think your number one priority honestly needs to be making sure the other person is happy and following their dream. You don't want somebody to have to stay in a relationship with you just because you're forcing them not to leave your state and like what you guys are comfortable in.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's, excuse me. I think it varies from relationship to relationship. I think a lot of people would be pretty salty if the other person left. Like, I think we're oversimplifying it. I think people would be like, let's just use myself. If you just dipped out to California and I was in Indiana going to school, I'd be like, you're really about to go all the way to California? You have all these other options and that's where you choose? So I think what you're saying is also true in that, like, the partner has to be supportive.
Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest thing about, if you want to make that, like, let's say Isaac did have a dream job out here and it was all his decision. Like, he could easily take a job in Michigan or he could take a job in California. I think you both need to sit down and have a realistic conversation. Like, where do we see ourselves? Because making sure that you want to marry that person is very important, because you don't want to do 2 years of long distance and then realize, hey, this person isn't for me. But
I think we got a good example in one of my absolute best friends. So he's been dating his girlfriend for about 5 years now, and she went to dental school, or excuse me, not dental school. She went to school to become a doctor in Ireland, and he played for the Chargers at the time when they were kind of making that decision, and they were just very open to each other about, hey, like, you have to chase what you're doing and I have to chase what I'm doing. I want to be with you for sure, but you have to be able to chase your dreams. So I think that goes back to what Allie's saying, and it's a good example because you just have to be supportive. And I think you were definitely supportive. Granted, I didn't have a choice.
Mm-hmm. But, I mean, at the end of the day, I just feel like you just have to be so understanding in situations like that, especially with long distance. And the reason I say have to be understanding is because you have to realize that, I mean, being from the age of 18 to 25, there's a huge growth period, not in your relationship, but in yourself. I feel like I'm a completely different person, and thankfully we've grown together rather than apart. But I think you have to allow that other person to grow, because I feel like it can be really constricting. Like, when I had dated my ex-boyfriend in high school and I went to college, we would fight over the most stupid things, like, hey, you didn't text me when you woke up. And those things can be more restricting than, like, allowing somebody to grow and flourish with you.
I mean, I definitely did that in my past relationship. But what we'll do is we'll move on because I think there's other transitions that are super important to talk about. Also, forgive our dog in the background, just wanting to play right now.
She is just hype.
So we move forward, and I played at this point in the podcast. I've now been playing for the Chargers for a couple years, and Allie's finishing school, and she now has a decision whether to stay.
A couple years. You had played for one season.
Well, about a year, and well, that's not true because were you in Santa Monica? Because we lived together last season. So you're right, a year. Yeah. So she had the decision to go and stay in Michigan and work in Michigan with an interior design degree. Don't know how that works anyways. Or to come out to California and chase her dream. So kind of interesting because she had to make a decision to move out to California, sacrifice a lot coming to the other side of the country. And then collectively we had to make the decision of like how that's going to work. Are you going to live with me? Like, what is that even going to look like? And
honestly, when I was looking for jobs, right when I graduated, I was looking, actually like a few months before I graduated, I started looking for jobs, and there were
our dog is tripping.
She looks all innocent.
Okay, she's fine. Okay.
So when I was about to graduate college, probably a few months out before graduation, I started looking for jobs. And at that point, I'm not going to lie, Isaac and I had, like, our relationship just wasn't in the best place possible. And I think it was with a few things. One, I think Isaac was maturing a lot faster than I was because I was still in the college phase of life where he had been living on his own for a year, had a full-time job.
Hella independent.
So when I first started looking for jobs, I didn't really restrict my job search to just California. So we had a conversation, and I had told him, hey, I've looked for a few jobs in Colorado, Texas, Arizona, just a few places that I saw myself, because I personally did not see myself living in Michigan. Isaac knew that. And I think it's very important that before you even get into a full, at that point we were dating 2.5 years. I think you need to sit down with your significant other and discuss important things that you want to do in life. I never saw myself living in Michigan for the rest of my life. I always wanted to go out, explore, and see what the world had to offer, whether that was in California or Colorado or a different country. Like, I was just very open. And so...
Well, you were not about to go to another country.
I totally would. If you would have been like, I want to move to Australia, I would have been like, I want to move to Australia. Like, I would totally do that.
Maybe.
But so then I made the decision to move to California. And
we had to make the decision of what that would look like. And again, in the transition period, I thought it was really important for Allie to live on her own. Not that you didn't want to do that, but I was like, she needs to live on her own because she needs to feel independent about everything in life.
And so this is another big transition period because I was moving all the way out to California, which the only person I knew in California was Isaac, my boyfriend.
Sir.
And so I feel like Isaac really did support me in the transition from going to college to California into a full-time job. And it might not look like the support you would typically think. Like, you would think that me moving to California, he'd immediately be like, okay, let's move in together. Let's start life together, blah, 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 blah. But I feel like he saw it in he saw that I needed that transition of being able to live on my own and allowing me to grow. He could have totally been selfish and been like, no, I want to spend as much time with you as possible. But looking back now, me living on my own in Santa Monica, making my own friends, hanging out with work people, I just feel like it was honestly like the best 6 months of my life. And I feel like I grew so much. Well, and I look at that period and I'm like, Isaac and I grew so much too. And it was so beneficial.
You literally, if you would have moved right in with me, excuse me, when you went to Santa Monica, you had a roommate that you didn't know. But
met her on Facebook. Shout out to her. Honestly, I fell in love with her. She's awesome.
Shout out to her. But if you wouldn't have, let's assume that you just kind of did the Irvine situation where you live by yourself. You didn't do that. Excuse me. You literally would have never lived by yourself if you would have just moved straight in with me.
If I went straight from college to living with my boyfriend, it honestly would have held me back a lot. And I think it would have held me back from learning about myself, pushing myself to make new friends and be outgoing and kind of go outside my comfort zone. Because when you're in a relationship for so long, I feel like you can sometimes kind of cling to the other person instead of being uncomfortable. So I think that was just huge for our relationship.
I just think it's important for people to like do things like living by themselves and be independent and like.
But I also, I mean,
what happens if you're 40 and you're like, I don't want to be married to this person anymore. And you're like, I've never even lived by myself. And you're 40. Everybody's different. I'm not trying to tell anybody how to live their life. I just personally think that's super important to have that independence. It's just me.
And it's the best thing ever. So after living in Santa Monica for 6 months, Isaac and I were spending more time with each other every single day. And I was like, okay, this is like I'm literally spending more time at his apartment because we live so far. So at that point, we had lived an hour away from each other. And I had some recent changes in work that made my job more flexible. So that's when I decided to transition from living in Santa Monica to Irvine, which was only a 10-15 minute drive to where he was.
And keep in mind, you mentioned it. So she's working at this point with a interior design or a staging company in LA.
Yes.
And so, yeah, you moved to Irvine, transition period. There really, this for us was not, you wanted to live by yourself, but we weren't ready to move into, or excuse me, yeah, you wanted to kind of transition out of the Santa Monica living with somebody. We knew we weren't ready to live together. So that was kind of like an intermediate stage.
And I think it's okay. When people say they're not ready to move in together, the other person in the relationship can take that as offensive. But I think people should take it as a blessing, because I think growing outside of your relationship benefits your relationship more than you know. I think moving in before you both are ready could honestly ruin your relationship, because you guys haven't grown as much as you probably should. And so we both had the discussion. We both were not ready though. So that was honestly, it probably saved like an argument, but we were both just not ready. We went out to dinner and we both knew it was on the other person's mind. And we both started laughing because we were like, oh my God, thank God. I just didn't know if I was ready yet. And when you move in with somebody, you want them to be like, I want you to move in now. Like, I'm so excited. So but I know it's going to be difficult for some of our listeners tuning in, because not everybody is on the same wavelength and on the same page as their significant other, which can make these transition periods a lot harder.
And it's where you just have to be honest with the person. I mean, you shouldn't have to move in with somebody if you don't want to. I think when you live by yourself in Irvine for probably, 6 months?
Yeah. So I exactly 6 months, because I moved there in July. Or no, a year. It was a full year.
It was not a full year.
Oh, no. I moved there. I moved to Irvine in December, and I lived there until camp August. The next year. So almost 7 months. I don't know.
So, and I think at that point we were both like, all right, we're both super ready for this. I mean, it just became like, I'll sleep at your house for a couple nights. You'll sleep at my apartment for a couple nights. And it was just dumb.
Everybody knows how expensive rent is in California. So it was just, at that point it was like, okay, because I had originally said I didn't want to move in with him until we were engaged, but I ended up making a little sacrifice, and I was like, okay, we need to sit down and just have a discussion on, do we both want to be engaged in the next year, and make sure that we were still on the same wavelength for that, because he could have been like, no, I'm thinking about getting engaged in like 2 years, which I probably would have been like, okay, then I don't think I want to move in with you just yet. Yeah.
And I think it was just good to live together, not being engaged. Mm-hmm. I think that was good. So then we make the decision, the transition phase, when we say transition, we want to get into kind of the work world transition, because that's really important too. But she transitions into living, we're living together. Mm-hmm. And I think supporting one another in that transition is easier, because you're literally together. Mm-hmm. Like it's like both of our process. So we'll kind of fast forward a little bit, if you're okay with it. So during this time, she's been working with the same staging company for a long time. Kind of like, I mean, you were probably kind of tired of it like midway through. You weren't really vibing with it like you probably would have thought you would have been.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I just don't think it was the company for me. It was my first job out of college, the first real 9-to-5 I ever had. And they gave me an amazing opportunity when I was so young and inexperienced. And as I was growing in my own self-growth, I had realized that the company just was not aligning with the person I wanted to become and the designer I wanted to become. And so I was honestly kind of nervous telling Isaac, like, hey, I want to quit my job, because so many people think that like NFL wives don't have jobs, and it's a horrible stigma to think that like I would just be riding off of Isaac's money. And I wouldn't be self-ambitious, but I was worried that he was going to look at me wanting to quit my job as like, oh, we just got engaged. She wants to quit her job and just be a stay-at-home dog mom, which, I mean, hey, if he was like, I want you to do that, I'd be like, maybe. No, but,
no, you would, no,
I would be not.
Like, you'd be like, I want to work.
Yeah. I have no idea how to do that. But, so it took a lot of nerve, I feel like, to talk to Isaac about wanting to quit and more specifically what my plan was after. But I also feel like it was really important that you saw me in my worst days working for my company, because I feel like it really showed you that this just was not, like, it affected our relationship. It affected our home life. You were
over it.
It was, yeah.
You were super over it.
It was not for me.
And I think the biggest thing is, like, I always say, oh, you have to bet on yourself. I feel like when you're with somebody, especially when you're engaged, like, you have to bet on them. Mm-hmm. And, like, I feel like I was just like, all right, well, if she wants to quit, like, I'm just trusting that she's going to, whatever it is, she's going to figure it out. I mean, and I still feel that way because we're still kind of in that transition phase with buying the house. I mean, we'll kind of get into that. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of trust that comes into that.
And I feel like I also had to, like, know that you were a little bit nervous about me wanting to quit my job, because when your significant other is like, hey, I want to quit my job, they're like, okay, well, like, is there a plan? If there is a plan, like, how can I trust that they're going to follow through on that? So I feel like I definitely had to be reassuring, not just because of you, but because I wanted you to trust me more so than worry about me. Another
thing too is I told Allie, even with just YouTube, like, you make income from YouTube. Mm-hmm. And I was super supportive because I was like, if you want to quit and just chase YouTube, like, the worst thing I would want is for Allie to be 40 and be like, why did I not just chase that when I was younger? So I even told her, hey, like, if you want to just chase that, you can. I mean, I obviously was super stressed about it because I'm like, she's just not going to have, like, a full-time job income. But I think it's just really important, especially when you're young, to, like, allow each other to make mistakes as it pertains to work.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, I feel like our situation is a little bit different because Isaac may make more than the average 25-year-old, but I also do want to make a disclaimer because I already know people are going to be like, oh my God, it's only because you have an NFL husband or fiance. I saved up so much money, and I have Isaac and I had this conversation that if I did want to follow YouTube specifically, which I ended up making a different decision, but if I did want to follow YouTube, I had a year's salary worth saved up. So it would not affect our relationship more than it would have if I didn't have money saved up. So that was, like, definitely a huge cushion.
Well, yeah, it was strategic. And we said, all right, we're going to take that salary and put that into a house.
Yes. So instead of just doing YouTube, we sat, I feel like I came to you. So Isaac has always been wanting to do new things, take on new ventures. He loves investing. He has a financial advisor, which I just feel like always juices him up about different things. And so I always have dreamed about owning rental properties and flipping homes, basically since I graduated college and even younger, like when I started my major. And so I was like, hey, I have all this money saved up. What if instead of just, doing YouTube, why don't we do something that I'm passionate about and you're passionate about and just kind of start our own little company?
So, yes. Well, the reason I paused is because I do want to talk about Local Human and you supporting me in that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so we just basically were like, let's just see what happens with this. But it's very strategic. I mean, I think there's, like, a fine line between, hey, chase your dreams and, like, hey, let's come up with, like, a very strategic plan. Mm-hmm. Because we feel good about it. And I think with something like this, it takes both people. Like, I'm fully invested with my time, money, efforts, everything in what she's doing. I mean, it takes both of us.
It definitely does. And obviously not every relationship is going to be like this. But when it comes down to it, I feel like you need to not only bet on yourself, but bet on the person you're with. You guys need to have your visions aligned. And when it comes to taking risk, like, I think taking risks can be the best thing for a person, whether it be in their job or in their personal life. I just think taking a risk, like moving up to California, not knowing anybody, it could be something like you could do it and well, I wouldn't say you would regret it, but I would say, like, why not do it when you have the chance? And so,
yeah, well, and I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, this is the age to do it. I mean, the thing is,
Itchy ear.
I always tell Allie, like, the people that are, and we're just talking, I don't want this to turn into like a financial podcast, but here's a little nugget for you guys.
Little nugget.
And this is how I operate in my life. One, people are going to be like, well, he has more money, so that's not fair. My money that I make now is the money that I make now divided by a lifetime. So when you think about it that way, it's not crazy, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's divided by years. But what I was going to say is the people that are paid by the time they are 40, and I keep using 40 as an example, are the people that take risks when they're in their 20s. I'm 25. I already feel like I'm behind. Like, I make great money now, and I scheme because I'm like, I feel like we're behind. So that's another reason to support your partner. You have to give yourself the opportunity to be like financially free and have like financial freedom when you're older. And I think that's like Allie had the mindset to be like, all right, here's what I want to do. Here's my vision. And I'm like, I support you. You're helping both of us out. I mean, it's our money.
Yeah. And I think even more so, like, not just buying the house, but also things like YouTube and the podcast. And I mean, kind of indirectly TikTok. But I feel like really, I mean, everybody says that like the top % of millionaires or whatever, everybody has not a side hustle, but they have different forms of income. So it's coming from multiple sources. And obviously this is not a money podcast. I'm not very knowledgeable on like money and investment and all that stuff. That's kind of more Isaac's forte. But I do know that I want to be a stay-at-home mom in the future. And so why not take a huge risk now? And then down the line, I'll be able to make money from home and raise my kids and get like 3 more dogs and maybe a horse. I don't know. But I think it's really important that Isaac and I were both on the same mindset of like, we both want to take risks right now. But even when you're taking risks and you both agree on it, it's still a transition and you still have to entrust the other person.
We'll talk about kind of my transition too. So I've been in the league for 4 years now. I have no intention of getting out of the NFL. But I'm really focused on easing my post-football transition because it's going to come at some point. Hopefully it's a time when I choose to transition out of football and not a forceful retirement. Mm-hmm. So that's why we're doing things like the real estate. You know, obviously I invest money in other things too. But I'm also like really working to create a company called Local Human. So you guys can go check it out, Local Human.
Go check it out.
But I am like always scheming.
Literally, like if you guys never taken the Enneagram test, you should go and do it. But he is a 3, which is the achiever. So he is always on top of things.
Hit me up with ideas. I am always scheming. And Allie has like you've had to ride the wave of like Isaac scheming. And that's,
boy, have I.
It's been really important. I think Allie's support type, if that's a thing, is a little bit more passive. Like you're kind of like a passive supporter. Like you're not going to come up to me and be like, I love what you're doing. I'm so proud of it. Here's my suggestions. I support you. You're not going to say that.
What do you think I'm going to do?
Whereas I will say that. But Allie is kind of more of like if I take 40 calls a day, she doesn't really trip about it. You're like a silent, like, I'll give you your space.
Yeah, like I'll like, if he's like, oh, I have 20 meetings on my off day, I won't even complain about it because I know he's doing what he loves and it'll benefit us both in the future. And
so that's really important too.
I do say I'm proud of you though.
Allie does not tell me that often that she's proud of my scheming.
You're kidding.
And this is another thing that you have to communicate.
He's kidding, guys. He's kidding.
I'm not kidding. We can let the public record. You can say it to the
okay, way to call me out. Well, I guess I need to improve on my words of affirmation.
It's okay. Because I do feel supported by Allie. So it's not like I say that, but I do feel supported. The point is you have to find ways to, one, communicate with your partner why you're doing what you're doing. So I communicate with Allie. This could be a legit job when I'm done. Like Local Human, if it continues to grow and we're doing a lot of cool things, like it could be my job after football. It's not going to pay like football, but it's something that I'm passionate about and I can do for the rest of my life.
I'll carry us after football's done.
And
I'll carry the bag, my team on my back.
Carry the bag, literally. And so that's super important for the other person to realize because it makes their support easier. And then it's obviously important for her to support me. Like, okay, if Isaac's scheming on something, because I trust him, it's got to be worthwhile.
100%.
And I just think that's super, super important.
At the end of the day, when your significant other is making a huge transition or taking a risk or whatever it may be, I feel like the number one thing is understanding support. Like, there are so many things that are important, I guess. It's just that you just have to trust that other person, and you just have to honestly just be there, be there for them and support them and be allowing them to grow. Because if I would have been like, Isaac, I don't want you to do Local Human, I think you should quit it, I don't think you should do it anymore, that would have been horrible. Like, what kind of relationship is it if one person is dictating what the other person does? And it's really important to have that growth in your relationship, and not only have that growth, but having somebody in the background cheering for you, whether or not Isaac thinks I actually do that.
I think what she's kind of joking about it, but I also think it is important to understand like how your person feels supported, because that also really matters. Like some people might need time, some people might need it, literally the love languages, but some people might need different things. And like, if you have a partner right now and you're randomly listening to this podcast and you're like, I'm going to go home and I'm going to make sure that they follow their dreams, you have an opportunity as their partner to maximize their chasing of this dream, or to kind of like hold them back in a sense. You just telling them to go chase their dreams doesn't mean anything if you're not doing anything to actually support it. Like, I'm not in love with YouTube, but like, I'll sit here and do the podcast because I enjoy helping you and I enjoy sharing our story. And
I feel like you want me to like you having a YouTube channel, a successful YouTube channel, is definitely one of my dreams. And so I feel like Isaac recognizes that, and he was not always that supportive, but over time he's became so much more supportive, and he's my number one fan now. He's like, did you upload a vlog today? Did you upload a vlog? And whenever I'm vlogging in the background, I'm like, hey, can you take that phone call outside? He's like, oh yeah, for sure. And so it's not necessarily the fact that he's on the camera, he's being OD, being hyper on the camera, he's not filming, he's not vlogging, but I feel like him going and taking a phone call out in the hallway is supporting me.
My issue with it is I'm such a 3, as Allie mentioned. I'm like, Allie, you need to be scheduling out your YouTube postings. You need to be giving yourself 3 hours a day to edit. You need to be, because now that she's not working, I see it. Really, I'm like, that's your job. Here's what you need to be doing, that's a whole nother kind of doesn't matter. But the point is, like, be an active supporter. Don't just be a silent supporter.
But be an active supporter in what your significant other's love language is. If you guys haven't read the Love Languages book, I think it's really important. Honestly, Isaac and I are about to start reading it again. I've read it without him. I don't think he's read it. But I think it's really... I just know
it. It's in my heart.
I think it's really important because I am acts of service and gifts. So if Isaac sits down and films a video with me, I feel so much support. Now, if he says, hey, I really liked your video today, I feel good about it. I feel supportive, but I don't feel as supported as if he were to film a video with me. Now, for Isaac, if I bring him home a cupcake and I'm like, hey, great job on the Local Human launch, versus if I bring home a handwritten note telling him how like amazing that was and how proud I am.
I feel like mine is so simple. Like, literally, you wouldn't even have to bring a note. Literally just say, I'm so proud of you. Man,
oh my God. Okay, you're making it sound like I never say stuff like that.
No, now we've opened it up. It's okay. I'm like,
this
let me clarify.
This man is gunning me now, and everyone's gonna be like, she doesn't support him.
No, Allie definitely supports me. The thing is, I make Allie do so much stuff too for me, like just random stuff. I'm like, well, hey, what
people don't know is I literally was in the beginning start of Local Human, and I literally was the graphic designer, and I helped you so much during quarantine.
I mean, you made our best-selling shirt.
Somebody's getting a call.
Oh, my phone is connected to the...
That's funny.
To the Bluetooth.
Okay. Anyways, yeah.
But yeah, Allie is an unreal supporter. But she, like I said, in a lot of ways, you do it in your own way, which it doesn't matter because it still helps the growth of like my overall goals.
And I feel like that's the most important thing.
Yeah, that's way more important to me because I'm a 3 and I'm logical. I'm like, whatever it takes to make this thing successful, that's support.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome.
And that's pretty much where we're at with the transitions.
Yeah, so we're currently going through the transition of renovating a home. We'll keep you guys updated. If you guys aren't subscribed to my YouTube channel, feel free to go and subscribe, and then go and follow our Instagrams and all the social media accounts, TikTok, whatever you guys want to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if you guys have any relationship topics you guys want us to cover, or advice, issues, whatever you guys want to hear from us, let us know. We're going to continue talking about relationship issues and transitions and all of that stuff. And we'll just show you guys our perspective, share our perspective on it. And hopefully you guys can learn from us. And
it'd be also, if you have just random questions about like the financials, if you're listening at this point, the financials of the house, like I would love to do a whole breakdown for people of,
ooh, Isaac's about to go.
Here's what it cost. Here's what it's going to cost us. Whatever renovations, all that. Here's our projected returns, projected new appraisal. What do we do with that appraisal? We could go through all that for people.
Man, this man wants to start a money podcast.
Well, I'm just saying, like, people who are listening might be thinking, oh, they have more money. But like what we're doing, it just depends what market you're in. Like a lot of different people can do it.
Mm-hmm. 100%. So feel free to go and follow us on all of our social media accounts. Make sure you subscribe. If you guys are watching on YouTube, be sure to hit the thumbs up button. And if you are listening to the podcast, go and give us a 5-star review and tell us what your favorite thing about the podcast is. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you next Wednesday.
Yes, sir.
Bye, guys.